I want to talk to you about another war, Ukraine. I was quite surprised, I'll be honest with you, by what you said last week about Ukraine, describing it as a territorial dispute. It's picked up a lot of blowback, as you know. Only surprised because of your military background and because you were on record as supporting helping Ukraine after the invasion of Crimea. Do you regret actually just using that one phrase?
Well, I think that it's been
a territorial dispute.
I think it's been mischaracterized. Obviously, Russia invaded that. That was wrong. They invaded Crimea and took that in 2014. That was wrong. What I'm referring to is kind of where the fighting is going on now, which is that western border or eastern border region, Donbass, and then Crimea. And you have a situation where Russia has had that, I don't think legitimately, but there's a lot of ethnic Russians there. So that's some difficult fighting. And so whatever, the conflict area, that's what I was referring to. And so it wasn't that I thought Russia had a right to that. And so if I should have made that more clear, I could have done it. But I think the larger point is, okay, Russia has not shown the ability to take over Ukraine, to topple the government, or certainly to threaten NATO. That's a good thing. They've been weakened. You now have the fighting in those areas. I just don't think that's a sufficient interest for us to escalate more involvement. I would not want to see, American troops involved there. But the idea that I think somehow Russia was justified that's nonsense.
I mean, I was in Ukraine interviewing President Zelensky last summer. What I was struck by was the utter resolve of the people there, which I suspect would be exactly the same if somebody invaded any part of America, which was not to give Putin an inch. Not an inch. In fact, they wanted Crimea back. And I think they would take issue with it being categorized as
so like I say, I think they have the right to that territory. I just think that's the source of the conflict. It's in those regions, which there's likely going to continue to be a lot of conflict on that going forward. So if I could snap my fingers, I'd give it back to Ukraine 100%. But the reality is, what is America's involvement in terms of escalating with more weapons, and certainly ground troops, I think, would be a mistake. So that was the point I was trying to make. But Russia was wrong to invade. They were wrong to take Crimea.
What's your view of Putin?
Look, I think he's got grand ambitions. I think he's hostile to the United States. But I think the thing that we've seen is he doesn't have the conventional capability to realize his ambitions. And so he's basically a gas station with a bunch of nuclear weapons. And so for us, one of the things we could be doing better is utilizing our own energy resources in the United States. We could be permitting natural gas pipelines from Marcellus, doing a lot in Alaska. That's where he gets all his power, and obviously he's influenced Europe by having so much energy. So the way to hit Putin is to hit him with energy. But I do think you look back, all the defense analysts and me in the past, we overestimated his conventional capability. This has been a huge blunder for him, huge costs. And we'll see what ends up happening with his longevity and power. But this has been a loss for them.
There is a move now to hold him accountable for war crimes, bombing maternity hospitals, and genocidal activity in parts of Ukraine, wiping out whole cities, Mariupol and others. Would you support that?
I mean, I think he is a war criminal. This ICC, we have not done that in the United States because we're concerned about our soldiers or people being brought under it. But I do think that he should be held accountable.
How does it end the Ukraine war, do you think?
That's the thing. I mean, I think I think those regions and the border in Crimea, I think are likely to be a stalemate for quite some time. And unfortunately, a lot of people will end up dying if that's the case. But I do not think it's going to end with Putin being victorious. I do not think the Ukrainian government is going to be toppled by him, and I think that's a good thing.
One of the issues about it was, people were saying, okay, well, what happens if China decides to invade Taiwan, which may well happen in the next couple of years? If they do, is that also a territorial dispute?
The thing with territory is just that's where the fighting was. There's not as fighting on the western side, and you have situations where there's ethnic Russians there, and it's a messy situation. But Russia did not have a right to go into Crimea or to go in February of 2022, and that should be clear.
And if China did invade Taiwan?
That would be aggression. Absolutely would be aggression.
And Americans should get involved in that?
So I would say that Taiwan is a strong ally of the United States. I think that's a critical interest. I think it's for us, but also for our key allies like Japan and South Korea. And I think overall, the number one issue that we face internationally is checking the growth and the rise of China. They're much more powerful, I think, than Putin and Russia are, and they really represent the biggest threat that we've seen to our ability to lead since the Soviet Union.